All right, we're going to go over chapter 10 right now. I mentioned to Mark as I was talking to him yesterday, um, since it was a good halfway into the book before I got a copy of the author's images, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it as I get time, is I'm going to go back and re-record lectures for all 12 chapters from the book. All right, not while you're in class, but I'm going to do them on my own, probably at home, and I'm going to recreate the site, and as much as possible, at least, I'm going to try to do two things. One is make it look the way the author's looks, and two is when there's something in the book that's been updated because we're in Joomla 3.3 now, I'll try to bring that up. All right, and chapter 10 is a good example of that. Some of the stuff that was in here, I had to look all over for it. I was Googling stuff last night to try to find out what went with what, etc. So I did do some of the stuff that's in here yesterday. I'm going to give you some suggestions. Whether or not you take those suggestions and run with them or you don't do anything with them, I guess it's going to be up to you. All right. So the idea is now basically the site has been completed. So what we're doing in chapter 10, chapter is 10, 11, and 12. 10 today on extending Joomla, 11 next week on working more with templates, and then 12 a week from today when we'll be working on search engine optimization, etc., is kind of fine-tuning it, tweaking it, whatever you want to call it. All right. So as it says, you've got the basic site up and running. You've got all the content and functionality, but what they're trying to show you here, as it says, is the real power of Joomla lies in its extensibility. All right. Now we've had this talk, and Mike W has weighed in on this, and he's made some very good points too, with the fact that possibly what I should have done instead of this, instead of going over Joomla with you, is to go over WordPress. All right, which is another content management system. The learning curve is really a little softer on it. It might be a little bit easier to use. All right, and why did I go with Joomla? Because I already knew WordPress, and I just wanted to learn something else myself. I went through the book. I think this is something that would give you another marketable skill, etc. For the spring semester, because I'm going to have book orders in probably in less than a month. And the classes that you'll be taking with me are the internship class, which is online. Literally, you have to sign up for one credit class. We never meet. I just tell you, we talk for about an hour, and I tell you what you got to do in there. So that's one class. And then you have to do the mobile web app for iOS and the mobile web app for Android. Not sure of the books I'm going to use for those yet. In fact, I'm still waiting on a swing book that's supposed to be coming out literally within days for a Dytel swing book, so we'll see how that goes. And the other class is the 152, 164 class, which is the design and implementation projects. All right, and in that class, you literally create a project. What I did in that class last year is we went over a book from Larry Ullman that's called E-commerce Concepts. The problem is it's very hard to get that program to work because you've got to go in and make all sorts of changes to your htaccess files and a bunch of other files. I used the book about 4 years ago back, actually when Mike took the class, and he went in and made changes to the htaccess files and got it to work. All right, I made similar changes and it didn't work. So I used the newer version of the book last year, and more or less we went over the stuff that was in there and we got it to work, sort of. So what I'm thinking of doing is not going through that and possibly going through a simple book that's on WordPress to give you just yet another content management system that we can go through. And we do that probably not very long, 6 to 8 weeks. And then the last 10 weeks of the class would be more like the end of this class in that you build a project. The project is due somewhere around May 1st to me, and I have to be able to look at it, bless it, so to speak, and then after that you've got 2 more weeks to fix it up. But then the last day of class, I invite about, last year was about 6 people who were external. I had 2 of the VPs came here, my dean, the associate dean. I had 2 people here from Print Corporation. I had 1 person here from Foremost Media. And if possible, I'd like to get probably about 6 to 10 people who are external from BTC in here, and you present it for them. All right, that's what we do. That's part of your grade for the class. It's not only creating the project, but it's presenting it. So if you get up and go, well, I'm a little nervous, that's okay. That's actually to be expected. All right. And I will tell you, maybe I've told you this before. I always remember that one of the things when I started, got my first teaching job, the guy who hired me, his boss, I had not met her until I was already hired. She came in and talked to me, Mary Zarowski, from Mid-State Technical College in Stevens Point, a very nice lady, and she said, tell you, if you want to get the class and you want to capture them, keep them in the palm of your hand, basically, is the first question that gets asked, make sure you've got an answer for it. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. So the first day we ever had class, it's about 5'2", and most of the class is in there already. This guy's like this, and I'm like, okay, class hasn't started yet. I didn't tape back then or anything, but I said, yeah. And he goes, really loud. He goes, I got a really bad bladder, and do you get breaks? And I hadn't even thought about it, really, and I said, yeah. I said, the class is 2 hours, so we'll go about 50 or 55 minutes, and we'll take a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll go 50 or 55 more minutes. And he was happy. I thought, wow, if that's as hard as it gets, I can answer questions like that. And the reason I'm telling you that is I was really nervous when he asked the question. All right, and that's the first time I'd ever gone up and lectured in front of a class. And the funny thing is, I lectured for 3 weeks, and then in the 4th week, I got a severe case, really, really severe case of tonsillitis. It got so bad, they gave me a regular microphone, and I whispered into it. And we did that for 3 weeks. Classes weren't taped, but if you can imagine, it was this into a microphone. And it hurt like hell to even whisper. But I didn't take any time off. And they told me how I was really this, wow, what a warrior and all this other stuff. But when you get up here, it's expected that you're going to be nervous. All right? And you get up here for 10 minutes or so. And what I've done in the past is we have it the last Thursday that we meet. And that Tuesday, we load everything on this machine that you'll need. You may need nothing, especially if we do eventually get those servers working. You might have everything ported over there. Then you won't need anything. All right, that'll be great if that happens. But you use this machine, you get up here. You don't give it like this where you're hiding from everybody and not look. But it's a chance for you to get up there and showcase yourselves. Last year I invited them, but it was real late, so they couldn't make it. I'll even try to see if I get Brian Ziegler and maybe Ross Bradley to come from Blaine's. But I've got probably a good pool of 20 people to draw from. And the way I look at it is if I get 5 to 10, then I'm happy, because I'll get 5 to 10 extra or internal from BTC also. All right, I might have ask Doug too, because he'll just come and heckle all of you. All right. Yeah. All right. So as mentioned on the bottom here of page 281, the real power of Joomla lies in its extensibility. So the idea is between stuff that's already in the box for you, so stuff that comes in the box that we haven't even looked at yet, and other stuff that you can go out there and add either for free, for a nominal cost, or for a lot if you want to pay for it. You can add a lot of stuff that we haven't put in here. They have you go and create, or I shouldn't say create, but they have you download, I think it's 3 or 4 extensions in the chapter. I was able to find all of them. I was able to download all of them. 3 of them appear to be working fine. One of them, for lack of better words, is kind of missing in action because it's there, but it's not doing anything. They say in the book, I followed all the steps. All right, and I remember with this one, I had problems when I did it last summer, and everything else worked. But I'm going to run over it, like I said, and run through some tips with you that hopefully will help. So the chapter's got 3 objectives. Try out some of the Joomla core extensions. Core meaning they come with Joomla itself. All right, literally you just have to go over the extension manager and add them. All right, download and install third-party extensions. One of the third-party extensions that they have you download in here, you have to register for. All right, so if you say, well, I'm not really comfortable doing that, I mean, literally you give them your name and your email address. They do have a terms of service. I read part of it. It looked like it was a standard type of thing. But they won't let you download it if you don't do that. Okay. Now, if you say, well, I don't want to, I think I saved the zip for all of them. And if I did, I'm going to grab that and throw it out in a folder with today's date on it. All right, I think I saved all the zip files for all those extensions. All right. And put extensions to work to enhance your site or the administrative interface. As it says, don't let the term extension confuse you. Some extensions are part of the Joomla core. And in fact, they mention here that you can break extensions up here on 282 into 3 types. The big ones, which they call components, the medium-sized ones, which they call modules, and the small ones which they call plugins. All right. So as it says, let's take a look at each one. All three of them get managed through the components menu in the back end. So again, if we go into the back end here, you'll notice that, and I have not updated yet, I know some of you had said that. Oh, I've got this again where I got to make that small. There we go. That if we go in here, all right, they're all done, as it says here, through the components menu. All right. And this is part of the way of doing it, okay? And you'll see the rest as we go through in class. All right. I'm going to make a suggestion to you, but which again, take, don't take, it's up to you. But especially if you're either A, behind in this project, or maybe B, haven't even started it yet, which is possible. All right. I'm not going to put a due date on this. I'm going to hope that by the end of October you've got this done. Because I'm looking at it that if it's the end of October and you've got this done, then you've got all of November and at least a week or so in December that you can be working on your project. All right. And I'm looking at it that if you, let's just say that, you know, starting the October 6th or whatever it is, that Tuesday, if you go through a couple chapters a period, you should be able to do that in 3 weeks. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's 12 chapters in the book. Some of them you can probably go through faster. All right. And if you want, either remove everything that you've got from Joomla or create a new database and start from scratch. All right. The reason I think you should do that is that's going to do nothing but help when you create your own project. All right. But again, if you say, well, I don't want to, then you're not going to no matter what I say. All right. And that's fine. All right. So as it says, the big ones, you manage them through a special components menu in the back end. They're the most comprehensive. They're the big ones. All right, often providing both administrative options and back-end options. An example is the contacts component. All right, and as it says, we'll have a more detailed look at that later in the chapter. All right, I did download that, but it didn't do what they said it was going to do. And again, I'll show you this stuff as we get to it. The medium ones, as it says, are modules. And that's, the first one is through the components, the second one is through the extensions and the module manager. As it says, they usually turn up around in the main content area. So they're things that typically are going to be placed, you know, you're going to position them. They're going to be on the back end, usually. All right. And we're going to look at this in just a second. This is maybe, I think I went over this a long time ago. I pointed you off to this page. But what's kind of cool about this page here, this is 283 in your book, is what this shows is where all those different position things are. So if you choose something and you put it in position, space, position 7, that's where it's going to go, is it's going to go in one of these 3 areas. All right, if you put it in position, I think 3 is actually over here, etc. So you can, again, dramatically change the way your site looks by just taking the stuff that's in it and moving it around into different positions. All right. The author suggests that when you do this, that you come in there and you do the extensions template manager, you click the options and make sure that preview modules positions is enabled. It says from now on every template that's you find through the template manager will contain a preview link. What that means is that if you do what they tell you to do right here on the bottom of 283, that when we get into the next chapter and we talk about templates, all right, what it'll do is every time you add a new template, that rather than sitting there and basically changing what you've done to the new template, it'll give you a preview first so you can run it in preview mode and see whether or not you like the way it looks. All right, literally to just go from one template to another is just changing a setting. It's not a big thing whatsoever. And again, there are thousands, not hundreds, there are thousands of free templates. Right? So when you go through there and you're creating your own site, again, I would suggest that you start going through some of these free template websites and just taking a look at them. I wouldn't expect you to take the time to go over 3,000 of them. All right, but you might want to go over somewhere upwards of 100 of them to look and see if there's one that really meets the requirements that you have for the site you want to create. All right, then finally, as it says, you've got the last one, the small ones that are called plugins. As it says, these are usually minor enhancements, all right, such as adding something that's fairly simplistic. All right, one of the things that they do at the end of the chapter is they ask you to download the other editor. So instead of having just the tiny MCE, which is the default, you have the JCE, which is the Joomla content editor. And what you'll notice is I've already done that. All right, so I've got it in there. I don't know if yours is in there under the components or not. I think that mine isn't because I think it wasn't there until I added it. All right. So they mention here, where do you get these extensions from? As it says, apart from the few dozen that's part of the Joomla default, you can find thousands developed by third parties on the web. And most of these, as it says there, are under http://extensions.joomla.org. As it says, it's the JED, or the Joomla Extensions Directory. And it's broken up, as you can see over here, into categories. So there's all sorts of different things, serving 8,427 extensions to the community. Again, the majority of these that are in here, if not all of them, are free. All right. But there are also thousands of third-party extensions that you can go out, some of which are free, some of which are at a very nominal cost. You know, $1, $5, whatever. Some of them are more expensive, upwards $100 or even more than that. So the picture is pretty similar. The one they show in the book here on 285 is pretty similar to the one that I just showed you. Okay, again, it's broken up into categories, etc. All right, so they say browse through it and keep an eye on the new and noteworthy section. Make sure you check out the editor's picks and the most popular. Those are the kind of things that you might want to do, all right, when you're actually creating your site. It'd be kind of nice if in your site you put in at least one extension that didn't come with Joomla, that you went out and did at least one third-party extension. I can sit there and mandate it and say, you got to do this, you got to do this. I hate doing stuff like that. All right. As it says, again, the JED lists many extensions, but there's much more. Yeah, they tell you to Google it. You all know how to do that. It says, what do they cost? Again, many are free or available for a reasonable fee. When they say that, they really mean it. A lot of them, they're set up so that they're selling based on quantity. And I'm not saying that it's not quality, but what I mean is if they're charging you $1, all right, they're trying to make something on it. That's all. All right. Most of them, even the ones that you can download for free, ask you to either register or click a button that says that you've agreed to the provisions of that site. Okay? All right. So as it says, let's explore some extensions that are part of the Joomla core package. I got this to work without any problem. It says we'll put the Newsflash module to work, and after that we'll have a closer look at some of the other stuff, and they go into the contents component. So as it says, you use the Newsflash component to show a random article from a selected category each time the page is loaded. Well, what's that? That is that right here. And I don't have many articles in the categories they told you to use, and that's why I think usually when it comes up, it's got the same article. But if you had multiple articles, it would do that. So I just want to quickly look at the steps with you for doing this, all right? Because, again, all I did was follow their instructions. So I'm going to show you what I did. I've done it already, so I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing. But the actual steps are shown on pages 287 and 288 that are in the book. All right, so if I go back here and I go over here into the control panel, all right, again, just following their steps, they tell you to navigate to Extensions Module Manager. All right, it says make sure when you do that, go under Articles. Okay, click New and choose Articles. Again, I've already done this, because I've got it in here already. All right, so they say select Articles, Newsflash. All right. And when you do, it brings you to the screen right here. They tell you in steps 2 and on, it says make sure the status is set to published. Mine was to begin with anyway. It says to get the module to display. That's the default. In the title, they told you to type in recent lectures, again, which I already did, so I've got it in there already. Set the position up here. Go down and find the position 7. All right. As they show right here, click the menu assignment tab. Okay, so when you do this, click the menu assignment tab, and they say that they only want it on the home page. So you've got to choose only on the pages selected. It's, I basically deselected everything that was here. And then they told you that the only place they wanted it was on the home tab in the main menu. So we did that. All right, that's step 5. Going back into step 6, they ask you to go back to the basic options tab, and if you look on there, there isn't a basic options tab. But when I started to go through there, it says module permissions, and I looked through here and I played with this stuff, and I went back to the categories, because what they tell you to do here is they say they want it under the art lectures. Okay, so I chose that. That's how I did it. Not the same way that they show it in the book. Okay, then turning up to the next page here on page 288, it says set show images to yes. That way the images in the article's text will be displayed. I don't remember where that was, but it's in here someplace. Again, I found all the stuff that they showed, so it could be any place in here. Sorry, I don't remember right offhand where it is. Set the show article title to yes so it displays. Set link titles to yes to turn the title into a hyperlink. All right, select read more with a show on there, and set the number of articles to 1. All right, again, when you get done and you do all that, it creates this. You can notice it's a hyperlink. There's just one article. There's the read more. If I want to do that, it brings me actually up to the article. All right, so that worked really with no problem whatsoever when I did it. Okay, the picture that they show in the book, it looks a little bit different than the one that I've shown you, because they've got it down here. All right, and I've got a different article, and they're not showing as much. They just did a partial screenshot. But that one worked, and I had no problems with it. All right, so you should be able to do that without any problem. So what just happened? They try to sell you on what Newsflash can do. Again, you can read that on your own as you get time or as you have the desire. All right. Then they also mention that if you want to, you can change the settings. I didn't do this, but notice what they've done over here. They've changed the settings. Instead of putting it in position 7, they moved it to position 3. Instead of setting the number of articles, they set it to 2. All right, so they're trying to show you that you could vastly change the way it looks by changing some of these settings. Okay? All right. The next one then they ask you to do here starts on the bottom of page 298, and as it says, it's creating a list of contacts using the contacts component. All right, it says here, back in chapter 4, we deployed that built-in contacts component. I had it, and it appeared as though when I did this, I kind of screwed it up. But that's okay. I'm just going to go back to the home page. If you remember, earlier on here we had I might not even have it anymore. The contact us. No, that's the staff thing. But okay, who are Corba? There we go. And we had this thing. Remember we put in these 3 people. All right. Okay, so we did that earlier. And what they're saying is if you want to, you can build off of that. So that's what they talk about in the next section here. It says the contacts component has much more functionality than what's needed for creating a simple form. Rather, you can set up a system of contacts displaying as many as you want for whatever categories you need. Why might you do this? Again, the idea is, if you look at the picture they show on the next page here, something like this, I mean, it's kind of a dumb picture. But the idea is, what you could do is you could have sections on your site that says, having problems, all right, and then you could show pictures of people that could help you, along with, you could have a tab over here with their phone number and or email address type of an idea. All right, and that was the idea behind this. I don't know if you've ever seen that commercial. It's for one of the glass companies. It's Safelite or one of those, that they mention that before they come to work on your car, they send you a text or an email or both, I guess, with the person who's going to work on it with a picture. This is kind of the same kind of thing when you think about it. All right, what this is doing, for lack of better words, is it's allowing you rather to do some personalization. All right, if you want to do that. Okay. All right. So what they told you to do here is to go to to components, contacts, categories. It says if you've installed a bunch of old stuff, you can get rid of it now. I will tell you that doesn't work, just because of the fact that you can get rid of them. But it's that fruit stand, remember that we did at the beginning of the semester, and I don't remember what the other one was, but there were a couple other ones in there. You can get rid of them, but you can't get rid of them until you empty all the stuff out first. You can't remove a category while that category still has articles in them. All right, so if you want to do that, you're going to have to go in first into the article manager and remove those articles. All right, trash them and then empty the trash, then you can remove those. All right, if you want to do that. Okay, so they tell you, as it says, to come back in here and go in and create a new contacts category. In the title field, put in Corba staff. That worked fine. In the description, they tell you to enter the description that's down here. Are you interested in working for Corba, etc.? If you want to do that stuff, you can. Then it says click on the contacts link. I was able to do all this stuff. It's just that it didn't show when I came up and finished all of it, and I thought that it would. I followed everything that they said here. They tell you to go back in and create a new contact. If you remember, we did that before. So again, when we did this stuff, all right, we added in their picture, we added in their name, we added in their email address, etc., and they ask you to do the same thing. All right, you can either use, I just basically, like I put me in there, I put my wife in there, and I put in Pablo Warhol because that's who they ask you to put in. All right, so I put all of them in. I put in pictures. Since I didn't have any new face pictures, I just used some of the other art pictures I hadn't used yet and put those in. But when I did it and followed all the steps and went to read it, nothing showed. So did I do something wrong? There's probably at least a chance that I did. All right. Doing this yesterday while watching an exciting episode of NBC's Law and Order. So probably I wasn't concentrating nearly as much as I could have. All right. So they tell you to come out and do this, and then they mention that after we do that, it says, have a go, hero, try out the content component settings. So on pages 294 and 295, the entire page, and then most of 296, they show you in here under the extensions module manager, those are the available modules that you have here. The one that I just showed you a couple minutes ago was this newsflash. So they explain what's in there. But the idea is what the author is trying to show you on these 3 pages. These are the different extensions that you can add that come as part of the Joomla core. All right, so you can add as many or as few of them as you have a desire to enter. Okay? All right. But then they go on 296, and they say that's all fine and dandy, but really, if you want to start using some of the power of this, what you should do is you should go in and start using some third-party extensions. I'm taking for granted that everybody recognizes now that when we mention third-party extensions, what we're saying is they don't come with Joomla itself. All right, so they didn't come as part of your download. You've either got to go out to the extensions.joomla.org or out to some third party to get these. They give you all the URLs. The URLs appear to work okay. I didn't have problems with those. But I want to show you as we go through these that I've already downloaded them. So what I'll do again is I'm going to pull all that stuff out, those zip files, and I'll create a folder over here. So if you don't want to go to trouble of having to register, you won't have to. So I'll put the all of the zip files in a folder that's called 925-2014. You'll be able to just grab them from there. If you want to go through the steps in the book, hey, more power to you. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. All right. So as it says, the first one they have you do is play with this alternative newsflash module. And if you go out there, literally, if you've got the PDF, you can just click on here, or you can manually type it in. All right, and it comes up, and the key thing to realize is when you come up, this is one you have to register for. Okay, and the bad news is I'd already registered, but I had no idea what my password is. So of course I did the lost password thing, and I waited for a while, and finally I said, the hell with it. I used one of my other email addresses and made another password, okay, or another account with another password, and it seemed to work okay. All right, this one, as it says, so this was the BT content slider is what you get. When you get all done, what that creates, and So what this BT content slider creates, I'm just going to show it to you right now. After you do all the downloading and the like, there's that one, there's that one. Now I've got to find the BT one. Hopefully I didn't remove it. There's 3 of them that they ask you to do, and I've got all 3 of them in here. Leave it under modules. No, that's not good. There it is. I tried moving these things all over the place to see if it mattered where you actually downloaded them, and it did not appear that it did. So the 3 that they ask you to download in this chapter are this one, the Mod BT content slider, this PLG, and this COM. So I'm going to copy those right now, and there's, oh, that's for another class, that's for the next class. So now you've got all 3 of them. There's the BT content slider, there's the other editor, and this is for an extended slideshow viewer. So you've got all those. Now I will tell you, I had no problem at all going to the site, as they say, and downloading the BT content slider. Not a bit. I had no problem at all going and downloading the Joomla content editor. Not a bit of problem. This one, for that enhanced slideshow, it didn't want to let me do it. When I followed the URL that they showed in the book and I clicked on it, it said that it was being blocked from BTC. So then I went out and Googled it, and it brought me to the exact same site. And when I went to the same site, it let me download it without a problem. So I don't know why I had the intermediate problem in there, but I did. So again, if you want them, I'm just going to copy all 3 of these, because otherwise I'm going to forget to do it. So I'm just going to literally throw these right now on the P drive. So if you want to follow along, or later if you want to go in and do all this stuff, under the in-class folder, there's now a folder there with today's date on it, and I will zip it also. And again, that folder, as you can see, has all 3 of the, all 3 of these in there. When you do this, it doesn't appear to matter where you put them. But once you do it, we're going to look at the steps in just a minute. You have to unzip them. But there's an unzip manager, basically, that does the unzip, puts it where it's supposed to go, and basically sets it up for you. And again, that's shown in the book, and that's what I want to take a minute to discuss with you right now. And that's shown right here. So they tell you to navigate to here. All right, we're going to pretend we did that, to click the download, to register for the free account, etc. But again, you can do that, but you don't have to. Then, this is the important step here, is step 2. It says in the back end of the site, go to Extensions, Extension Manager. You should immediately be taken to the install screen, which looks like this. All right, and click the Browse button, find the particular, either the content slider or the Joomla content editor or the enhanced slideshow gallery thing. Find the one you want, all right, and click Upload and Install. I did them one at a time because I just followed the steps that were in the book. I have no idea if you can upload and install more than one at a time. I didn't try to do that. All right, so I followed those steps. As it says, now install the extension by clicking on Browse, find it, click on Upload and Install. I did it. And it came back like it said. It came back and it says the module was installed successfully. It says, congratulations, you've installed your first extension. The new module can now be found through Extensions Module Manager. All right, so notice if I go into the back end here, bless you. So if I go into the back end and I go in to Extensions Module Manager, there's Newsflash that we did before. But I don't see it in there. So even though it said it installed, it didn't put it in where it said it was going to put it in. That's why I want to go back, and I have no idea how fast I'm going to be able to retape the rest of the book, because I'm going to do it, and if I try doing something and I screw it up, you'll never see that. Whereas when I'm taping them now and I screw it up, you see that. All right, but I'd like to give it to you and have it in a way where it works. And I'd like to put all that information out there So if you decide that for your project that you do in the 164 class next semester, you want to do something based off of Joomla, or if you're able to do some kind of an internship based off of Joomla and you need to go back and refresh yourself, you will have those lectures that hopefully where everything will work. All right, so that's the idea behind that. All right. So as it says, if you've installed all that stuff, locate the new one. It's under recent lectures, and maybe I did have it because I did have Newsflash in there, and it says in the module manager, locate the BT content slider. I didn't see it. It says click on its title to see the available options. All right, and that's what'll come up for each one of these. When you put in the options, there will be a page there that will show this kind of stuff that has the features and the functionality in it. All right, so then they walk through the different stuff that's in here, tell you where to put it, and this is what's supposed to happen. This is stuff that you can do without the content, the BT Content Manager, but the idea is it's got a much more uniform type of look to it, all right, than a lot of the stuff that we did, than a lot of stuff that you saw coming right out of the box. And as John will tell you, a lot of stuff that we had too where it would get a lot narrower, etc. down. That's supposed to alleviate all this kind of problem. All right. So they have you change it, 3 articles on a page, then 6 articles on a page, etc. Okay. So it says we've deployed the content slider to show the teaser text. Again, that's what it is. We talked about this before. Remember that read more, where we talked about this in the last chapter, where you could set that up so that if somebody clicks on it and they're not a registered user, you could bring them to a self-registration page, or you could bring them to where you'd say you're not allowed to see any more content without registering first, type of thing. All right. All right. So then they tell you that you can go in there and explore some of the options. Okay. The next one that they ask you to do, and this one, again, I installed it, but it didn't do diddly. It says showing images in a lightbox gallery starting on page 302. If you don't know what a lightbox is, basically it's a portion of your screen that you can either have by default every few seconds you can have the slides change on it. It's like a little interactive slideshow. We did this last year in the jQuery class. Remember we did that thing with the fishing stuff, and we had the lures and the people fishing? You did a little bit of that. All right, probably with limited success, but we did a little bit of that kind of stuff. All right, but the idea is you can have a single slide or you can have multiple slides, as they'll show in here. Okay, and you can set it up whatever way you want to. So again, this is the one that when I clicked on this, let me try it now and see what happens. All right, I'm going to just click on allow. This is the one that said it was blocked. I did it from home. Now notice that's where I wanted to get. All right, that is where you go. But when I did it from home yesterday, it blocked it. Why it would block it at home and not block it here, I have absolutely no idea. But again, you can take it and download it. There's always a download here. And when you do that, as you hopefully understand, this one has no registration, no anything. You always want to look for the one that if there's one that says it's got a Joomla 3 on it, you want that one. And I think this was the one they told you to do, the Simple Image Gallery Extended. All right, but I don't even know which one of these matters. I think I did the first one. And it's funny too, because on my screen at home yesterday, these were in the opposite order. Because I know I picked the last one. And I know it said Simple Image Gallery Extended at home. So it's different here. But again, I went through it in a different way from home. I went through all the steps as are shown in the book here, and I went through all the stuff that they show, clicked on save, went to the front end, clicked on the link in the main thing for the navigate to the new article, and I didn't have any of this. But the idea is when you set it up with an image gallery, that's all it's going to show here are the images themselves. And you click on any one in this case, and it goes from a thumbnail to the actual bigger size. Okay? Now again, I did what they told you to do here too, is they tell you that if you want this to work, this is probably as close to code as we've seen in here. You have to put in this. Inside of curly brackets, gallery, headers, and then in brackets, /gallery. And as it says there, it indicates that the image files in the images headers folder will be displayed as thumbnails. And it's possible I didn't have that. Maybe that's why nothing showed. I don't know. All right. It says, do you want more from your photo gallery? It says the plugin is great, but there's also other ones that you can use. It says if you're looking for a more sophisticated gallery tool, I didn't do this. It says you may want to consider a gallery component. A popular one is, I don't know if that's Foca, probably is. And as it says, it can present a large image collections using categories and subcategories. All right. So I took a class on this last summer, or 2 summers ago. It wasn't through Udemy. It was through literally through a company that runs all sorts of online classes. I don't even remember the name right now. But literally I had to sign up through URock when I first signed up for them. And then we got an account here for Blackhawk. And the reason I'm telling you this is we created something where it was a company that did landscaping. All right. And I'd show it to you, except that the site that we put it on, it was the instructor had the hosting, and you got to keep the site for 6 months. All right. And it was 2 years ago. And I don't think I even saved this stuff, to be honest with you. It was okay. But it was, the reason I'm telling you that is we did a slideshow gallery like this, where it was a landscaping company. He gave us pictures, and the idea was something up here that said, if you want to see samples of our work. All right, and it was broken down into categories where these might have been home landscaping, business landscaping, some other kind of landscaping, and you clicked on each individual one, and it brought up the picture instead of a thumbnail, it brought it up in a full view size. Okay, so that's what he's talking about here. All right, and then the last thing that's discussed in here, and again, I did this and it worked just fine. Starts on the bottom of 305. And they ask you to replace the default Joomla content editor, which again is the MCE, with JCE, which is the Joomla content editor. All right, so they tell you to go here. Again, I had absolutely no problem going out to this site. All right, there it is. It did not make me register. I just clicked the download now button, and I picked the Joomla 3X, as you'd probably guess. Did that. Went down and I read these, and I just picked, I think it was this one because it was the newest, and it said single installation package for Joomla 1.5, 2.5, and 3X. All right, and this one said alternative archive type. I didn't think I'd need that. And this one had a lower version than this one. That's the only reason that I picked this one. I think it's 243 that I picked. But again, if we look in here, whichever one I picked, yeah, 2344 is that one right there. Yeah. What I did was I went back after I loaded these initially, and I went back and literally just dropped all these. What I tried to find out is, okay, where should these things be put? Because when I downloaded them, you know, and I used Firefox, they went to my downloads folder. So I thought, well, where the hell should I put these? And I tried to look and see where, you know, I Googled a bunch of this stuff, and there was no consistency over where to put it. So I literally put it under my C:\, XAMPP, htdocs, Joomla, right under the Joomla folder. I literally put them all right there. Then I went into the installation manager, and I knew they were all in the same spot, and I downloaded them from there. It appears as though in Joomla, taking a look at it, that with these modules, where they end up getting put by default is if I go into htdocs and into Joomla, and I go into, I think it's the administrator, I don't remember if it's, no, it's not the components. The modules look like they go into here. All right, and you can see the content slider. But like I said, when I just followed the steps in the book, other than the one for the extended slideshow, by and large, at least it worked as far as I was able to do all the stuff. And again, you're going to have time. You know, I would sit there and, as they said before, go out to the extensions.joomla.org, look at what's new, and look at what's popular. Because if something's popular, it means two things. It means A, a lot of people are downloading it. All right, and B, since they're all downloading it, it must work. It must be pretty easy. It must be pretty bug-free. Otherwise, just Google, you know, simple extensions. Yeah. That they're, yeah. And again, depending on what you're going to do for your site, you'll see whether or not you have a need for it. Okay, so that, as it says, we go through here and we change it from the tiny MCE to the JCE, and the idea is when you do that, there's a lot more options here than what we had before. This will let you do things like bring in Word articles and either strip off all the codes that are put in there, or leave them in if you want to leave them in, and there's a lot of other niceties that it puts in there for you. Again, as it says here, turning up to 310, it says so much to explore. Well, the idea is, again, there's all sorts of stuff in here. You know, if you decide for your site that let's pretend for a second that John comes in here and he says, you know, I've done this site on X, whatever X is, and I was even wondering, would it be possible for me to create a real simple YouTube video? You can do that. You can either sign up for your own free YouTube account, or if you're going to do something, as long as I can see it first, all right, you can even put it on mine. I don't care. All right, if you want to do that and then add video to your site. To me, the more stuff that you put out there, the more impressive you're looking. Not to me, but if you're going to create this site, keep it and eventually show it to people with the idea of hopefully having it help you get a job, you want the site to look as professional as possible. So the more stuff that you can put in it, it can still be a simple site, fairly simple with just a few pages on it, but if you've got a nice template for it and you put in something like audio and video or whatever, just the more impressive it's going to look. All right. So they show, again, YouTube type of thing, Google Maps, Virtumart, so you can integrate an e-commerce site in there. And let's say that Teresa does a project this semester. All right, she gets her 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, pages done. And next semester she says, you know, I've always wanted to sell this. I know she's talked about her infatuation with turtles. All right, so maybe she'd want to sell, you know, it would work, Teresa's Turtles. All right, so she could literally put something like that in there, even if it was a mythical site. And she could create her own using Virtumart or something like that. She could have her own type of thing, where she could sell turtles and food and aquariums and whatever type of thing. So it should be something that you've got an interest in. All right. All right. Notice that they've got a thing in here called, I think it's Cunina, where you can set up, deploy a forum for the site. And sometimes with those community forums, you don't even have to register. All right. And then finally, as it says there in the extensions menu, you also find the language manager. Here you can add and install extensions, languages for both the administrative interface and the front end. So they have you come in here and they change some of the default text settings. I did this yesterday. I followed what they said. All right, and I did this. This did come up, but what they asked you in here to search for, when I searched for it, it didn't find anything on my site. So it might have been in an article that I removed. But you can follow the steps and see what happens. Again, is this going to be that important a thing? Probably not. All right. There's even other things that you can do in Language Manager that if you wanted to create a site, I always thought that BTC should be doing more of this kind of stuff, not necessarily with Joomla, but since we draw from a huge population in Beloit and Janesville, and I don't think that the population that we're drawing many people from that are of Hispanic origin. We should have extensions all over the place in our website where we have pages in there that are just in Spanish. You know, I think we should be doing that. We're not. And I've heard all sorts of reasons why we're not. I'll just leave it at we're not. Okay? So that was it for this chapter. Again, on Tuesday of next week, we're going to go over chapter 11, which are working with other templates. And then on Thursday of next week, it's around 3:48, something like that. We're going to go through the last chapter, Chapter 12, which is on attracting search engine traffic, SEO tips and techniques. That'll work out well. That's a shorter chapter. Chapter 11 is not real long, but it's, you know, it's long enough. It'll take at least an hour like this. But Chapter 12 is only about 10 to 15 pages long, so it's not that long. So I'm going to be responsible for between now and a week from now, digging through each one of these chapters and giving you a few things that I'm going to be expecting that you're going to be. So from chapter 4, add this. All right, how you do it, how you implement it is going to be up to you, but that'll be for your project. So that'll be step 2 of your requirements. Does all that make sense? All right, that's all that I had.